Well, that put the nonsense out of him. Well, hello again folks, and I hope you're all keeping well out there. Sorry I haven't been uploading much this last while, but between the bad weather and bad luck, I really haven't had much to upload anyway. Out of the last 4 attempts, I've had 2 hooded crows, 1 magpie and a miss, but you'll probably see some of that there on the oddshot videos maybe later in the year. Back to this morning though, and as you might be able to see, I'm busily setting out a dead rabbit for bait, as this farm that I'm on is currently well into the middle of its lambing. So I decided to come down this morning just before first light and see if I can get a few of the hooded crows, which always seem to be attracted to the area once the lambing starts. Now some people say crows don't do sheep any harm, and to be honest I've only ever seen dead lambs lying in the field with their eyes pecked out, but I have seen plenty of live, full-grown sheep that have been heavily pregnant and stuck on their back with one of their eyes pecked out by crows. And for that reason, the farmer's always very keen for me to shoot any hooded crows that I see. The rifle I have with me this morning is of course my CZ 527 Varmint chambered in 17 Hornet, which I've bedded into a form laminate stock. The scope is a Meopta 4-16x44 tactical, which I've mounted a Tacticam 5.0 and FTS unit to film through the scope, and of course up front is a Wildcat Panther moderator in 17 caliber. Now I probably sat the best part of an hour before anything turned up, but it was a couple of magpies and not any hooded crows. Now I can take hooded crows and magpies legally for the protection of livestock in Northern Ireland, but I usually leave them alone and use them as live decoys to help encourage some of the hooded crows down, even though it was quite tempting at times just to squeeze the shot off. The hide must have been doing its job, as at one point the magpies took a wild notion of it for some reason, with one of them landing on the ground just 4 or 5 yards to my left hand side, and the other one landing on a tree branch just 4 feet outside the hide on my right hand side, and kept keeking down to try and see what was inside. I would have loved to turn the camera around and get better footage of it, but it was that close to me, I'm sure it would have either seen or heard something, which would have set the 2 of them off onto a full-blown war cry, letting everything in the area know there was danger there. Thankfully though, my patience finally paid off, as a hooded crow came from somewhere behind me and quietly landed beside the bait. Oh, that wasn't half loud, hey. Well, at least we've got one to show for our efforts. Now let's see what the rest of the morning will bring us. Mr. Magpie didn't take too long to come back, and he's not half peeved about that crow lying out over the top of his breakfast. I maybe should have taken him when I had the opportunity, but I could hear another crow in the distance, so I give him a reprieve this time. Yep, here they come, and they're not best pleased either. Unfortunately though, they decided to land in the trees to my right hand side. No safe backstop, so no safe shot. a few minutes later and they kicked off again, but this time they landed in the trees on my left hand side. Shortly after that, I spotted the farmer's quad driving along the top of the field, so maybe that's why the birds weren't so keen to land. But I thought it was the perfect time to go out and set the bird I just shot up as a decoy. I actually wasn't quite sure if this was the right thing to do, as I'm starting to believe the birds are maybe catching on to my little tricks, setting dead birds up as decoys. Thankfully though, once the farmer had finished his rounds in the quad, another bird came floating in from behind me and landed beside the dead rabbit. Looks like setting the other bird up as a decoy wasn't a bad idea then. It wasn't too long after that shot when a third bird arrived, coming in from my right hand side and dropping quite quietly down beside the bait. Well, at least it was quiet at the start, because soon after it landed it started kicking up quite a ruckus as it, yeah, just like that really. So I had to wait a few moments for the bird to settle and finish saying hello, let's say, to the dead bird on the ground before I could take the shot. That definitely was an odd way to say hello, but then I'm not a crow. After a bit of a wait, number 4 arrived. This bird must have been a wee bit more cautious than the rest of them, as it decided to land just outside of the decoy pattern, but unfortunately for it, it wasn't far enough for the 17 Hornet. Things went a wee bit quiet for a while, so I decided to nip out and set some of the birds I had just shot up as decoys to see if I could spruce things up again. On the way back, I decided to slalom my way down the hill, just so I didn't leave a direct path to my hide in the dewy grass. Okay, I was just being silly really. I don't know how long it took, but another 2 crows did take an interest in the decoy setup, though they were being very cautious and instead of landing on the ground, landed up on one of the trees on my right hand side. They done this quite a few times, flying low over the bait and decoys, looking as if they're about to land, only to fly off and land on one of the trees, either on the right or left hand side. until one of them finally dropped down in just as I was repositioning the camera. It obviously was more interested in the dead birds than it was the rabbit I had set out for bait. Though I did have to wait a few tentative moments for the bird to step out from behind my decoy before I could get a clear shot at it. Thinking this would probably be a good time to nip out and set that bird I just shot up as a decoy to see if it would bring its mate down, I suddenly realised its mate was already about to land, so I had to prop the rifle back up onto the shooting sticks and get ready for the shot. Thankfully the bird didn't see all the commotion with the barrel going in and out of the hide. Thankfully now, with both birds down, I finally got my chance to nip out of the hide and set them both up as decoys, the same as the rest of the birds. Once back in the hide, I decided to top the magazine back up, while still keeping an eagle eye out for any birds that might land. I'm using my own hand loads, which consist of a 20 grain Vmax bullet and Vectan SP3 powder. I'm actually necking down PPU 22 Hornet brass and fire forming them to make better quality brass for the 17 Hornet. It might not win any competitions, but it's certainly minute of crow. The morning had really moved on by this point when I noticed another crow flying over the top of the decoys, only to land up on a tree on the right hand side. But as soon as I got the camera on it, it decided to fly off, and I thought, whoa, it's going to land here, and I followed it with the camera, only to suddenly realise there's already a bird on the ground that I'd never even noticed. Man, I almost didn't notice that bird, wherever it came from. I've got 7 in the bag, and at this point I thought I was going to get 8. But for some reason the bird took off again almost as soon as it landed. I gave it another hour or so to see if it would come back again, then decided to call it quits as the weather was starting to change, and for the worst. Well, let's see how we done. It was a bit of a mess really, and I can't remember
what order I shot them in, because I kept setting them up as decoys almost as soon as I shot them. As soon as things went quiet, I nipped out and set it up as a decoy, which seemed to work. But I started off with a dead rabbit as bait, of course. I didn't put the decoy crow out this morning, as I found, well, I think the birds are maybe getting used to that sort of setup, so I just set the dead rabbit out, and it took a wee while, but there's a couple of magpies took interest in it and started feeding on it, and then a hooded crow which I got, and I think that's that one there which they set up on the cradle. Yeah, forgive, there's bits and pieces hanging out of it that used to be on the inside of it. The one I set it over is actually one I shot later on. It was the one doing unmentionable things to one of the other dead crows before I managed to shoot it. But as I shot them, as I said, I set them up as decoys. Only have the one cradle, but I would set them up using just a wee spike, stiff wire, and that seems to do the job. I think this time last year I managed to get 8 here during Easter, and this year I've managed to get 7. Funny thing is, a couple of months ago, before the lambing had actually started, I set up in the same spot here and only got 1 crow, so I didn't think there was too many of them about. But now the lambing started, the crows have arrived, and I've managed to get a decent bag, and the farmer says he's managed to get 3 during his morning rounds as well, so the sheep lambing definitely seems to be a draw for them. There's I think 3 farms here that are all bordered onto each other, and they're all lambing at the same time, so it must be a decent draw for the birds. But anyway, the farmer will be happy, if there's such a thing as a happy farmer, that I've got 7 of them this morning, and it's going to rain before long according to the forecast, so I'm packing up and going before I get all my gear wet again, because the weather hasn't been great as last while, and I haven't had much luck shooting as last while, so it's nice to get a decent bag of them this morning. Anyway, cheerio folks.
I'll just make sure and tidy up after myself, as most farmers don't like dead things lying rotten in their silage fields. Well folks, that's the end of another one. I hope you enjoyed that, cause I certainly did, as I hadn't been having much luck beforehand. Hopefully though, it won't be as long before I get more decent footage. But until then, take care and look after yourselves, hey.